Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps in Depth, a program where we talk about the realities of the Catholic Church around the world, especially in those areas where she struggles to share her message as a result of persecution, discrimination, or simply difficult circumstances. Today, we will be looking at Bangladesh, a country in South Asia bordered by India and Myanmar. Bangladesh was originally East Pakistan before it broke away from West Pakistan in 1971 during a violent war of liberation. Let's see some of its history and the latest developments in this Asian nation.
Bangladesh is one of the most densely populated countries on Earth. The Muslim-majority nation is packed into the world's largest river delta, which flows into the Bay of Bengal. Despite suffering floods and widespread poverty, the people of Bangladesh exhibit remarkable resilience and pride. The People's Republic of Bangladesh is located in the eastern part of the ancient region of Bengal. The vast Ganges Delta is formed through the flow of rivers coming down from the Himalayas. Earliest records of civilization date back to the first millennium BC. Initially influenced by Buddhist and Hindu dynasties, the area of Bengal was ultimately dominated by Islam in the 13th century. By the 16th century, the region developed into a wealthy center of trade and industry. Eventually, the British Crown and its East India Company came to dominate this part of the Asian subcontinent. When Hindu India declared independence in 1947, its Muslim population formed one Pakistan divided into West and East. Neglect and domination by the West Pakistani government eventually led to war and a struggle toward autonomy for the East Bengalis. Beginning in March of 1971, the war lasted 9 months, with casualties in the millions and many more displaced. Subsequently, with the help of the Indian Army, Bangladesh gained independence in December 1971. The new state endured further political turmoil and many military coups. With democracy being restored in 1991, relative calm and economic progress has followed. The economy of Bangladesh has performed well, gaining about 6% annually over the last 2 decades and reaching World Bank lower middle income status in 2015. Nearly 2/3 of the workforce is employed in agriculture, with rice the single most important product. Bangladesh produces about 80% of the world's jute, a natural fiber used to make cloth, rope, and bags. Highly prized tea is grown on scenic slopes of the northeast. Most of Bangladesh's export earnings come from the garment industry, which also generates some 20 million low-paying jobs. Nonetheless, Bangladesh remains underdeveloped due to ill governance and corruption. Many industries are primitive by modern standards. Climate and geography also hamper the country's development. Cyclones, flooding, sea level change, and droughts have devastated great parts of the population. Bangladesh is now widely recognized to be one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change.
Bangladesh has a population of more than 169 million people. Bengali Catholics are a minute community, but they have an important impact on the society around them. Through education, healthcare, and in the media, they are a light for the world, transmitting the good news of the gospel.
Bangladesh is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. Sunni Muslims account for nearly 90% of the population, making it the third most populous Muslim country after Indonesia and Pakistan. Islam was made the state religion in 1988. The main minority, Hinduism, accounts for a little over 9% of the population. The remaining 0.5% consists of Buddhists and Christians, of which Catholics are the majority. The earliest recorded Catholic presence were the Portuguese missionaries and traders in Porto Grande, Chittagong, where they built the region's first churches during the 16th century. The Jesuits opened their first mission in 1600. In 1852, the Vicariate of Eastern Bengal, with headquarters in Dhaka, was entrusted to the newly founded Congregation of the Holy Cross. The Diocese of Dhaka was canonically erected in 1886.
Although church is a very small minority, we feel in Bangladesh we have a role to play in development work, but development with a religious dimension. Through Caritas, through other organizations, we have, for example, so many educational institutions. We cannot think one day of becoming a big community here. Christian community. We'll have to be always salt of the earth.
In Bangladesh, total religious freedom is paradoxical. On one hand, every citizen has the right to profess and practice any religion they choose. But on the other hand, Islam is the state religion. This has a very real impact on the daily lives of Christians. For example, Sunday is a working day. Therefore, Christians are not able to go to church, and schools must be open. Despite this reality, or rather within it, the Bengali Christians are called, as Cardinal de Rosario says, to be salt of the earth. One way that they are answering this vocation is through the publication of a Catholic newspaper that is read by Catholics and non-Catholic communities alike.
Christians make up less than 1% of the population. Despite their minority status, for the past 75 years, the small Catholic community has influenced the nation through their weekly magazine, Pratibeshi. From the pressing issue of climate change to the land rights of the often victimized tribal peoples to the spiritual development of Bangladesh's Catholics, the weekly Pratibeshi is an important voice.
In a Muslim country, to have a magazine that is the voice of the church is difficult. But the staff of the weekly Pratibeshi, they are going on to publish it regularly. The motto of our magazine, the weekly Pratibeshi, to develop the morality as with the spreading of our values, our Christian values that we call religious. We cannot say it directly our Christian values, but we say human values so that it can spread out throughout the people in the country. A country highly populated, highly Muslim people.
Pratibeshi is a magazine which is addressed to everyone. Children, youth, elderly people, also different levels of education. Very intellectuals are writing there. At the same time, very small children are writing. It's very difficult. For example, with the 8 dioceses now, and every diocese has its own uniqueness, and also the tribal people, indigenous people. So to keep them satisfied or give them something which is meaningful, it's hard job. It's hard job.
First article I wrote when I was in class 6. When I published my report, I encouraged to write. When I was in college, at that time, every month I wrote something, a story, poem, a report. From that time, I am writing, up to now I am writing. So, consequently, what happened? One day I became a good writer. In one word, I can say, Pratibeshi taught me how to write and how to become a journalist.
It has contributed in formation of writers, which is very important. We are a very small community, but in thinking, in our intellectual power, we are not small. We can make others influence. We can give the nation a big thing. And I think Pratibeshi has that platform where it can grow Christian writers, Christian intellectuals, Christian researchers who can initiate to write and practice.
From 1976, I have been writing as a priest, then as a bishop. So as bishop, I have not written anything yet as cardinal. Pratibeshi has become the mouthpiece of the Catholic Church.
Cardinal de Rosario describes Pratibeshi as the mouthpiece of the Church. Central to her message is the dignity of each human person. One of the key missions of the newspaper, as of the Church, is the care and support for the tribal people of Bangladesh, who are often marginalized and exploited. Father Bulbal Agustin Ribeiro explains his pastoral work with the tribal people of Bangladesh.
Mostly our Catholics are tribal, but they are oppressed in many ways. So the weekly Pratibeshi gives a special space for them for this issue. Whenever something happens anywhere in the country, the weekly Pratibeshi focus on that issue. We are trying to involve the tribal people in our publication work to give chance to grow up, to be aware about their rights.
There are many people who are ethnically minority. There are many people who are in Dhaka, who are Bengalis, powerful, influential. Less influential people knows that I have someone in Dhaka who has some command to whom we can collaborate. So Pratibeshi as a newspaper, yes, of course, but its social value, its empowerment value, its social solidarity value is huge.
Unfortunately, in the past years, the rise of fundamentalism has coincided with an increase in violence.
As minorities, the tribal people are often attacked, tortured, received, the lands are grabbed by the majority Muslims especially. From the gospel value, we feel the need of defending these defenseless people and to be with them and to suffer with them.
There are now about 100 villages, Khasi people, and they are basically forest dwellers, and they do not practically have their land rights. They do not have land title. These people are staying around this place for hundreds of years. They have a traditional shifting way of cultivating betel leaves. They live or stay in one place for 30, 40 years, and once the land is exhausted, they shift. Almost 99% Khasi populations are Christians. The indigenous groups in Bangladesh are not constitutionally recognized. Therefore, they do not enjoy human rights and other civil rights like the mainstream people. So they are in constant struggle for their land. They are very badly discriminated, and they are very badly excluded by the government, exploited by the tea companies and the Department of Forest. 3 years ago, and one day the manager of the garden came with about 200 people and started breaking down their houses, while the men were all out in the forest working. So first the women resisted, and then the men came and both the group fought. One from the tea company died in the hospital after 3 days. Now altogether they are running 5 court cases. So they have to maintain this, and they are always now in a kind of fear. More than 25 Khasi villages have disappeared because they could not fight with the forest department. They could not continue fighting with the tea estates. So they lost their possession of the land.
They have always pressure from the powerful people. Those are living beside around them, especially the Muslim. No, they think that they are minority people. We can do whatever we want to do. Even they can kidnap their young girls, or they could attack the people, the women or men. It doesn't matter. So this kind of pressure they have always inside. But as a church, we are beside them to protect them. Always we take care of them.
The work with and defense of the tribal people is essential. Education in Bangladesh is a key element in helping the tribal people to escape generations of poverty. His Excellency Bijoy de Cruz, the Bishop of Sylhet, explains some of the challenges.
I am Bishop Bijoy de Cruz. This new Diocese of Sylhet was created in 2011. As a first bishop of this diocese, I have a lot of plans. In the beginning, I did not have any land, I did not have any house, and I used to call myself a landless and homeless bishop. In 1950, there were about 700 Catholics in this area. When the diocese started in 2011, we found that there were 18,000 Catholics. there is a big possibility of evangelization in this area, though it is a Muslim country, because we have about 200 tea plantations and there are 700,000 Hindu workers, and some of them are open to Christianity. Every year we have about 250 adult baptisms. Most of my people, they are very poor. One earns less than €1 per day for their hard work. Parents cannot buy enough food for the children. They cannot go to the doctors when they fall sick. And education is still a dream for them. And church stands by them. Because of your loving support, we survive and continue our mission and ministry in this diocese among the poor people. Though we do not know you personally, but all our children, all our people, we pray for you so that the good Lord bless you, give you joy, happiness and peace in your family life.
It is not only the tribal people whom the Church takes under her wing in the field of education, but countless young people, whatever their religion or circumstances. In 2018, we had a conversation with Father Francis Costa, and he explained us the great importance that Catholic education has for all people in Bangladesh, regardless of their faith.
In our schools, mostly the people of other faiths study, because you know that all over Bangladesh, in all 8 dioceses, we have about 500,000 Catholics. And from my experience, I can say that though we are giving services to the majority who are not Catholics or not Christians, but they really appreciate the way we teach our values, human values, moral values, gospel values to some extent. And you know, especially during admission time in Dhaka city, if I would say, people really fight to get admitted to our schools, because the parents especially realize that how the church-run schools have been trying their best to form their children in the light of, you know, values, human values, which we really need in today's world. Many families cannot afford to send their children to school. That is why our bishops are also sometimes facing difficulties to put up new schools, as they also don't have enough funds or enough money. But nonetheless, I would say it is not the school building, but even under the trees sometimes we find that children are there for their class, and teachers are there trying to teach our schools, our students. And you are right that with education things change. This is what we all experience and we all agree. And I hope the way we are trying to help our families to raise their children, not only in terms of faith but in terms of education and other values education, will really help us to have an integral development. What I say is not only economic development but integral development, that faith and then money and our commodities and our necessities of daily lives will be well integrated, so that people can have really a happy life.
Amidst all the important projects of the Church, one of the most important is the intercessory prayer of the Contemplative Sisters. Some 40 nuns live in this majority Muslim country. The community of poor clerics of perpetual adoration make rosaries, wine for Mass, thank you cards, but most of all, pray. As cloistered contemplative nuns, with their intense prayer life, they accompany the persecuted church, the church in need, and the church that struggles to survive amidst an exacerbated secularism. They dedicate their lives to pray and work to strengthen the faith, hope, and charity of the mystical body of Christ. Each nun, with their own personal story and struggles, offers prayers for those who don't pray, but are in most need of God's intervention. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us in another program of Where God Weeps in Depth. If you want to know more about the work that the Church is doing in Bangladesh, we encourage you to contact the information at the end of this program. Thank you, and God bless.